All right, we've got a few people coming in, so we're gonna give everybody just a little bit longer. All right, everybody. It is Friday afternoon. It is 3 o'clock Eastern US time. Thank you for joining us for the dissertation, Writing the Dissertation from Template to First Draft webinar. I am Dr. Johanna Broussard. I am the Qualitative Research Specialist and Mentor here at Statistics Solutions, and we are a full-service dissertation support company. We will talk more about the services we offer at the end of the program. Before we do get started with the presentation, given the time constraints, I will not be able to go into specific details about your projects if you ask questions, but I should be able to provide more general information regarding how things can be done. There should be time for questions. I ran through this a couple of times and there are about 5 or 6 minutes left. So that being said, while everybody rolls in, I think we are all here. But if anyone rolls in late, we're going to get started. You will receive within a week a recorded copy of the webinar along with the PowerPoint for your records, for your notes, for you to look back over. Okay? So let's get started. So here's what we're going to do during this webinar. We're going to cover what a template is and where you can find them, how you move from template to outline, and then from outline to draft, and we will discuss working with track changes because that will be essential to getting feedback from either your committee or if you do hire us for our other consulting services, it will be essential for working with your support staff editors there. So, what is a template? A template, in its simplest form, is a preset format for a document or a file that is used so the format doesn't have to be recreated each time there is a new document. These things are useful to keep the format of a particular document standardized, regardless of the content, regardless of the user. So if you've ever looked at, you see these in Microsoft Word for resumes, for flyers. If you've ever thought about publishing a novel through Kindle Unlimited, you can find templates for how to set things up for your chapters, for the formatting, so you don't have to figure all these things out yourself. Templates are really great for handling a lot of the structural basics. So that way, someone who's new to writing this type of document, and let's be honest, most of us only write one dissertation in our lifetimes. So having a template in place helps with a lot of the basic structural components. Where can you find your templates? Well, first place you should check is with your department or your college. You know, whether if you're in the English department, if you're in the College of Humanities, if you're in social sciences, if you're in biological sciences or life sciences or engineering. You check with your department. If they don't have one, check with your college. If the college doesn't have one, check with your graduate school, either by visiting their website or by emailing the graduate school to see if they have one. Now, not all schools will have templates. The university I attended did not have a template. But if your school has a template, let the template guide you. Because in simplest terms, the template tells you what you can expect and what they expect from you. So, what will the template contain? I've learned working with clients here, not all templates are identical. At the very least, a template will contain a list of the major sections for your dissertation and basic formatting for your word processing document. How your margins should be, how to handle spacing, how to handle a table of contents. And a lot of schools will have this, and that is all they will provide you. A good template, however, will be detailed, it will be specific, and it will have explanations so that you know what you need to put in each section. You know what's expected of you. And this is essential for your success because when you know what's expected of you, it's easier to deliver on what is expected of you. So, here's an example of what you might find. I've chosen from a student who was at Texas State University, the template they received. So not all templates will look like this, but this is an example of a good template for the purpose of your study section. You see how it starts with, begin the purpose statement with a succinct sentence that indicates the study method and overarching goal. And then they provide you with a formatted example. The purpose of this, and then you have to choose quantitative, qualitative, or mixed method study, is to, and then you describe the study goal that reflects and encompasses your research question. So if I were going to use this template for what my dissertation was, I would fill this out with, the purpose of this critical qualitative study is to explore the impact that political, professional, and popular discourses on warrior heroism have on the likelihood of combat veterans seeking treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder and suicidal ideation. That is the statement of the purpose of my study. And then what you would follow it with is, as they say, is a brief but clear overview of how you will do this, what instruments and data you will use, and with whom and where. So within this, and then they say within the purpose statement, you need to identify your research method, state a purpose that reflects the research questions, what variables, what constructs, what phenomenon, concept, or idea. Describe the research design clearly as it aligns to the problem statement that has been discussed earlier. Briefly describe your participants and or data sources and any relevant geographic information. So what you have to do before moving forward, as they say, is ensure that your purpose is a logical, explicit research-based response to the stated problem. So this is what a template that is done well will provide you. So how do we then take that and move it to an outline? Because a template often doesn't have the specifics for your study. So how do we work with it? That's what we're going to be discussing in the next few slides, because we need to do something that is a systematic movement to move from having a template to a workable outline from which we can draft the chapters of our dissertation. And so the following example that I will be using is for a qualitative dissertation, but the same basic principles we'll talk about will apply to quantitative and mixed methods. It's just some of the specifics will be different. So let's first look at the template for a section called Data Collection, Processing, and Analysis. What it says is you describe the collection, processing, and analyses in enough detail so that the study can be replicated. Describe the steps that will be taken to carry out the study. Provide specific details relevant to the execution of the design in each appropriate section. Describe the types of data to be collected, how the data will be coded, and or what statistical analysis and software will be used as appropriate. So and then they specify if this is quantitative, then you describe the analysis strategy used to test each hypothesis. The discussion must be sufficiently detailed so that the appropriateness of the statistical test chosen is evident. For qualitative, how will the data be processed and analyzed, including any efforts for triangulation? Provide primary qualitative design support for the proposed analytical strategy and explain the role of the researcher. For mixed methods, you do both. This is what makes this a good template. They tell you specifically what you need to do for each type of study you could be conducting. So the first step is to then write what the section needs. What does it need you to do? It needs you to describe how you will collect the data, describe how you will process the data, describe how you will analyze the data. And if it's qualitative, including any efforts for triangulation, providing primary qualitative design support for the proposed analytical strategy, and then for qualitative, explain the role of the researcher. Now, what do you do next? You jot down key phrases for each of these. And this is only an example. Yours would be specific to whatever you are going to do. So, describe the collection of data. The example I'm using here, either Zoom interviews or face-to-face interviews. The interviews will be about 60 minutes in length. That will begin with having an interview protocol to keep all interview questions standardized. Notes will be taken during the interview, and only the audio will be recorded for data collection. So then, how will we process the data? The interviews will be transcribed. If you are doing this type of a study and you're transcribing interviews or focus groups, you would further describe, are you going to do it by hand? Are you going to use transcription software like Zoom or Microsoft Word, or Microsoft Word has a speech to text option? Or are you going to use something like Otter AI? If you do use Otter AI, I will heavily advise you not to skip the formatting and editing step, because I have seen Otter AI be basically a coin flip when it comes to quality transcripts. It either produces really good ones or it produces transcripts that are borderline unreadable. And then, are you going to have a participant transcript review? This is optional, but it is becoming more common these days to let your participants review the transcript to make sure that, what it says they said, they actually said, and they came across the way they intended. Then you will describe the analysis of the data. Okay. And most people use some sort of qualitative data research, analysis, and data management software. You might use NVivo, MaxQDA, Atlas TI, Deduce. We have our own in-house Intellectus Qualitative that is very user-friendly. It's browser-based, so it doesn't require you to have a lot of RAM or purchase any specialized computers to run it. And so I'm using that as an example. Transcripts will be uploaded to Intellectus Qualitative, and then I will conduct a thematic analysis. I'm using the example Brown and Clark because it is the most common and widely used. It is a 6-step thematic analysis. You would then describe in roughly a 3-sentence paragraph each of those 6 steps. Remember how the template said you want to provide enough detail so others can replicate your study. And of course, with qualitative, we discuss the role of the researcher. Well, we've mentioned some of it throughout. The researcher will be conducting the interviews, designing the protocol, taking notes. The researcher will likely be formatting and editing the transcripts. If the transcripts are to be if the interviews will be transcribed by hand, the interviewer, the researcher, will likely be doing that, and the researcher will then be conducting the analysis. So for a qualitative study, that is the role of the researcher. And you would talk about that. Basically, each one of these topics should have between, we'll say, 2 and 3 paragraphs. You want to provide sufficient detail to be clear, but you don't want to overload. That said, if you are uncertain as to how much detail, err on the side of providing too much detail. It is easier to go back and edit than it is to have to add detail when it wasn't there to begin with. So keep that in mind. Now, what do you do next? Well, you repeat this same process for all of the sections of the chapter you're working on, and then you do it for each of the chapters. What this does is it gives you a working outline for each chapter. It turns those abstract sections and the abstract instructions you were given into actionable steps. As a former college professor, and now in my role here, I've seen a lot of students look at templates and get a little tripped up because they sort of get the idea, but then they get really confused as to, okay, I see what it says, but how do I work with that for my study? And that's why creating an outline, while it may not be a formal outline, and it may not be the final outline because sometimes things change as you write them. But having a working outline helps you and your brain wrap around how you go from having an abstract, vague, general things like a template into something you can make real, like your first draft. And when you have a working outline like I showed you in the last slide, you have a writing checklist. You can check off what you need to do for each section, and that way if you don't finish writing, it's easier to see where you left off, what you need to do, and how to move around. And we'll talk about tips and best practices later in the presentation. However, now that you've got a working outline, this might be a good time to check in with your chair, your major professor, your research advisor, whatever your school is calling them. Because your chair is there to help you and to guide you. If you have an outline that you think will cover what the template says and what you need to include, your chair would be the person to show the outline to get feedback on. Getting feedback at the outline stage before you start writing is a good way to save headache and revision time after you've written the first draft. I know it seems like a lot, and it is. Writing a dissertation is a major undertaking. You all deserve praise for making it this far, and you all deserve to be set up the best you can be for success. And so, with that being said, check in with your chair. I know some chairs like weekly check-ins. If you've got because it's easy to turn the template into an outline for a given chapter that you're working on in a week to send it to your chair and get feedback while you work on the next chapter's outline. This lets your chair see you're moving forward, you're making progress that's regular, and it helps you get feedback quicker because an outline is easier to provide feedback on than a long, say, 15, 20, 30-page chapter. So you can get some quick feedback to help guide you as you write, and then you go forward in writing, and possibly the initial round of edits will already be covered thanks to getting feedback on the outline. Now, let's transform those phrases into a draft. And so this is a fairly vague example of the data collection section that I talked about earlier. And I wrote this up so you can see what it might look like in a very skeletal way. The researcher will collect data by scheduling Zoom interviews with the participants. Each interview will last between 45 and 60 minutes. Using the interview protocol, which is found in Appendix C, the interviews will be semi-structured, allowing the researcher to guide the conversation while being responsive to participant responses. And because this is something you'll find a lot of people talking about, I would suggest citing this statement, which I have done here with the vague author 1, date. During the interview, the researcher will make notes on participant responses, nonverbal communication, and thoughts that emerge as part of an effort to be reflexive and mitigate biases. This also needs to be cited. Only audio will be recorded for transcription purposes via Zoom transcription. This isn't what a full section would look like, but this is an example of what one paragraph in that section, specifically on how to collect the data. This is what it would look like. You can provide more detail if you wish, but this would be the bare minimum that is expected of you. And so, because if you're writing your methods and what you will do, you put a plan in place, and that's the purpose of it. When I talk about writing the method section out, I'll give that to you here because I'm using it as an example. Treat it like a recipe. You have to be detailed and give every single step. Because if you skip a step in a recipe, the food doesn't turn out the way you want it to. If you skip a step when you're baking or go out of order, the results can be disastrous. So treat your method section, whether you're quantitative, qualitative, or mixed, as a recipe. That's a little bonus tip that I'm giving you because it's something that a lot of people don't think about when they're writing that section. So be specific, be detailed, be thorough. Now, once you've done that, you flesh out the draft. You repeat the previous step with every section of your chapter. Now, do you have to go in order of the sections as they're going to appear? No, you do not. For some people, myself included, I've always felt the need to go in order so I don't forget things. But some people find that working on smaller sections, if they just have a little bit of time, helps them feel like they're making continued progress. Whereas, oh, I don't have time to work on this large section, but I could do this small section in a couple of hours. I can bang that out. Work in whatever manner is best for you, your brain, and your situation. So keep that in mind. You know, the best advice to making a successful dissertation draft is to know how you work best. Because you're the one who's writing it, so you need to write the way that you work best. Okay, we have a Q&A. As I said at the beginning, yes, this will be made available. I don't know when you'll get the email, but do have a good meeting for your dissertation. So, working what's best for you. You can work out of order. If you have a couple of chapters drafted, you can work on different chapters at different times. Sometimes people work best when the mood strikes them. Other times they work best when, they have a set time. So for some people, chaotic work. For some people, setting a schedule. Do what's best for you, okay? Because you're the one who has to do this. Don't forget your citations where they are appropriate. If it is specific for what your study is, there may not be citations. But if you're talking about research design and theory for interview, then yes, there will be sources you need to cite. If you're talking about analysis methods, you'll need to cite that. If you're writing your literature review, you'll need to cite pretty much everything. So don't forget your citations. That's an easy mistake to make. And one of the hardest things to do, I know it. It was almost impossible for me, and I failed at this many times, but resist the urge to edit while you were drafting. I've heard from numerous fiction writers that the best advice they have ever been given is the first draft is just getting the ideas and the events and whatever you're talking about, getting it on the page. You get everything on the page. The second draft is where you go back and you make it look like you knew what you were doing the entire time. That's a famous piece of advice for one that fantasy novelist Neil Gaiman would always give in when he taught fiction classes at various universities or in his master class. But resist editing. It's hard because you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know. It's not perfect. Remember, right now we're only talking about the first draft. Your first draft will not be perfect. Your second draft will not be perfect. I look back at my dissertation, which went through about 5 or 6 drafts before my full committee and the final defense, a round of revisions after that, and then the grad school editor made changes to it then. And I've looked at it about a week ago, and I still find grammatical errors, syntax errors, sentences that were incomplete. There aren't that many. There aren't as anywhere near as many of them as there were in the first draft, but it's never going to be perfect. It's just about making it the best document it can be. So resist the urge to edit until you see the basic form of it take place. And now we do want to talk about working with track changes. As I said, track changes when you're working with any word processor is a great way for multiple people to look at a draft and to provide feedback. It is a systematic review of feedback from multiple users because they can all put their comments on the same draft. It helps you manage multiple versions of a document, and it helps prevent making accidental changes that may or may not impact the document itself. And as I've mentioned previously, if you hire us to help you and you're in the prospectus stage, usually I'm working with Tom on those, and we will take one draft that you submit to us and both of us will put feedback on it. So you have one copy to revise, but you have feedback from multiple sources. It's really great for that. You can do this in something like Canvas as well, but since most people will just email drafts to their professors from Microsoft Word or Pages. Also, if you are an Apple person and you're working with Pages, please be certain you submit and save your file as a Word doc, not as a Pages specific format, because if any of your faculty members are working from a Windows-based PC, it's much more difficult to open. And I know unless Canvas has changed, Canvas just sort of glitches out with Pages files unless they are saved as either a Word doc or a PDF. So that's just something to keep in mind for any who are using iMacs, because you want to make all of this easier for other people to help provide you with feedback. So let's look at what track changes does. And so if someone says this text should be deleted and they delete it, you can see from the example screenshot that I put together, any deleted text, they will change the color from black to red. I've seen it done in green. If you have multiple users, each one will have a different color palette. But in this example, it changes it to a bright red. So you can see, hey, here's a change that's been made. And it adds a strike through, so you know they're saying delete and remove. the text is still visible. So you can go through and read what they suggest deleting. And then if you look at the top of the review bar in Microsoft Word, you can either accept or you can reject the change. And that's what's really great about track changes. You have to accept or reject and make that decision for each proposed change. So that way you're conscious of the changes that are being made to your document. Now, do you have to accept every proposed change that your committee or that we would suggest? No. But if your committee members propose a change and you decide not to make it, then you would probably need to have a reason that you can base with some form of literature or from what you found in your study, but evidence-based rationale for not making that change. So that way you can treat it like it's a conversation with them and you can discuss why they think the change is needed and why you think the change is not needed. Treat it like it's a negotiation and you're having a conversation with a colleague at work on how to produce the best document. Now, comments. Comments are there to provide feedback and to make suggestions without editing the text. So you can see in the example here, a comment will be highlighted and then there will be a little talk bubble that will click to you to see this. And in the comment, it will tell you what the person is trying to suggest. When I make comments, instead of providing edits, it's usually something that is either unclear, whereas I'm not sure what the person intended to say, or it might be where in this section they said they were going to do X, but when they talked about it in a previous section, they said something else, and I want to draw their attention to, you said you were going to do thematic analysis for a case study using Brown and Clark. Here you're saying thematic analysis for a case study using Soldano's method. These are two different methods of thematic analysis. Soldano also works better for phenomenology than for a case study. So you might want to think about what you're actually planning to do, both in terms of thematic analysis and in terms of your overall research design. So you can unify that. And that's a change I, even as a professor, cannot make for the student. That's something you have to think about and you have to make yourself. I would also leave a comment if, hey, this needs a citation and I don't know where you're getting the information from off the top of my head. So go find a citation and add a citation. Or this needs further embellishment, you need to add more to it. If I suggest a revision like that, I will always say, and here's some steps that will guide you in what you need. Not everyone provides feedback like that, but good comments don't just tell you what you need to do, but they help guide you in doing that so you don't have to keep going back and forth. So now, remember, when it comes to track changes, you remain in control. This is your study, this is your dissertation, your project. If you hire us, we are there to help you, and we are doing what we think will make it the best study possible. Your committee is doing what they think will make it the best study possible. So you have to make the decision to accept or reject any proposed change. And that's good because instead of just seeing a new document, you then have to think about it and and ask, well, why was this change suggested? Okay, I missed a comma, or I didn't put a verb in the sentence, or I misspelled a word, and Microsoft Word didn't catch it. That can happen. Or you use the wrong two, or two. So these things that it won't catch that if all the time. So having someone check it for you can help you see that. If you get feedback from someone and you're not sure what the feedback means, ask for clarification. Anytime you're uncertain, do not be afraid to ask for clarification. You can't do as good a job as you intend if you aren't sure what they're asking of you. Work with your commenters and keep an open mind. They're there to help you and to make your dissertation better. So, and I know this becomes your baby and it becomes really personal and you become really invested. And it can be hard to see corrections and edits and comments as critiques in the negative connotation that the word has gained. But do your best to try and see these critiques as being positive. They want to help you. They want this to be better because as members of your committee, they are also signing off on this. And so they want it to be the best it can be because that makes you look good, but it also makes them look good. So they're trying to help. Sometimes it can come across as snippy. Academics are also known for forgetting that not everyone has the same sense of humor as they do, and not everyone is as familiar with jargon and the literature of their areas as they are. So keep an open mind, have dialogue with all of your commenters and all of those who are providing you with feedback. And if something is unclear, ask. So that being said, we will have a little bit of time for questions if there are any in a second. But should you need additional support, I wish to remind you that Statistic Solutions is a full-service dissertation consulting company, providing graduate students and faculty as well with timely editorial support for their dissertations and scholarly projects, including, but not limited to, conference talks and turning your work into journal articles. For more information about our services and receive a complimentary 30-minute consultation that is available Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, please contact all of us at info@statisticsolutions.com. You can also see the link that Samantha has placed in the chat to schedule a dissertation consultation, and our wonderful, amazing, and knowledgeable sales staff will help you get exactly what you need. You can also phone us at 1-877-437-8622. This is how you contact us, and we do have experts helping you from topic development all the way through preparing for your final defense. We work primarily with social sciences. We do a little bit with health sciences and education as well. Qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods. We are here to support you as you need. So that being said, noble, esteemed panel attendees, we do have a bit of time left for questions. So I open the floor to you if you have any. Please feel free to ask them either in chat or via the Q&A. Okay. I know it's Friday and it's getting near the end of the day and everyone's ready to just start their weekends, but I do want to offer everyone the chance to ask questions. And of course, if you do have questions later, you can always reach out to us and through the email provided, and they will put your email, send your email to me, and then I can help with any questions you have in the future if possible. All of us can help you at this stage through info@statisticsolutions.com. Like I said, we are a full service support company who consults, edits, and assists in all manner of dissertation studies within primarily the social and health sciences realms. So that being said, I will give you guys going once, going twice. Okay, if there are no questions, thank you all for attending. Once again, I am Dr. Johanna Broussard, the qualitative research expert and mentor at Statistics Solutions, and we are here to help you. You will receive a recording of this with the PowerPoint, usually within a week. The time frame is something that changes depending on how many attend the webinar, but you will receive that for your records. And whether you come to us for support or not, we wish you all the best success in your academic careers, in your professional careers, and in your personal lives. So that being said, from all of us here to all of you, thank you very much for joining us. Have a lovely day and a lovely weekend. Goodbye.